Welcome back to my channel. So in this particular module, we're going to put or introduce the concept of strategy or strategic management as a form of management. And this particular module ties in really well with the next module, which is entrepreneurship as a form of management. You see, every firm, there's a little bit of tension between strategy and entrepreneurship. Strategy is how an organization pursues its competitive advantage, and it normally has kind of a long-term time horizon. You normally think of like 5-year strategies. So once you get that strategy moving, it's like a freight train. You can't really stop it, you can't really change directions. But within that strategy, within that strategic context, you also have the entrepreneurial impetus. That's your innovation. That's your desire to be deviant. That's your desire to do something different, something new, something cool. So as a manager, you've got to counterbalance these things, right? How do you support the overall organizational competitive advantage? And how do you manage this desire to do things different? How do you manage innovation? How do you do these two? It's a real tug of war. But in order to understand this tug of war, we've got to start in this module by looking at what is strategy and all the ins and outs of it, and then we've got to shift over to what is entrepreneurship and understand the ins and outs there. Okay? So this is what you'll see in this particular playlist. We'll begin with the introductory video, which is what I've just provided now. It gives you a little bit of context about what we're talking about. Then we're going to give you some basic vocabulary and some basic concepts that you find in strategy, namely the means and ends of the firm. The means are what you have inside the firm, and the ends are your goals, what you're trying to achieve with the firm. Okay? So we'll talk about that in more depth. Then we'll actually look at what are some different ways that we compose strategy. I mean, it's great to say strategy is the pursuit of competitive advantage. You're doing something with means, you're doing something with ends, that's great. But what do these processes actually look like? That's what we'll talk about in the third video. Then we'll look at sources of superior profit in a firm. And I really like this particular discussion because in economics they always talk about, resources are relatively homogeneous, they're kind of the same. No, we're going to look at how they're actually different kinds of resources and how those resources contribute to different levels of competitive advantage. Then we'll look at two of the main kind of feuding, if it were, concepts in strategy. Namely, the resource-based view of strategy, which has been put forth by Jay Barney, and it's means-based. And we've got the Porterian view of strategy put forth by Michael Porter, and that tends to be more ends-based. Okay? So we'll look at those two approaches and look at how they compare to each other. And you'll have a really, really solid understanding of strategy at that point. And then what I like to do to kind of prep you for the discussion of entrepreneurship as management is I'm going to introduce the same concepts of resource-based view and Porterian strategy, which are strategic management concepts, and introduce their equivalents in the study of entrepreneurship, namely causation, which ties to the Porterian view of strategy, and effectuation, which ties into the resource-based view of strategy. So you'll see how these concepts are analogous, and then I'll introduce actually something that I use in my own research, which is the study of articulation. And this video is going to tie in really, really well with our discussion of entrepreneurship, which will be in the following module. So as always, hit that thumbs up if you like this video. Definitely hit that subscribe button, and make sure you make your comments down below. Thanks, and I'm looking forward to hearing your reactions to our discussion of strategy.